Hey everyone, Zatman here, and I'm going to bring to you episode 2 of State of the Gods. Yesterday I gave you guys episode 1 and I got a lot of positive feedback, so therefore I'm going to make episode 2 today. Before I begin, I just want to clear some things up about my YouTube channel and what my intentions are for my YouTube channel. I saw a lot of feedback that said maybe the quality of the presentation of the YouTube video was not top notch, or the lights were off, or maybe I was stuttering a little bit in my words. I'm not putting too much effort in the presentation of these videos because my main intention for these videos is not really to attract viewers or make my YouTube channel big. This is just my way of giving back to the community. This is just my way of getting information that I have, knowledge that I want to share with newer players, to make them understand the game, have more fun playing the game, and just get better overall at the game. This is just my way of getting that kind of information out there to you. So as long as you can hear my voice, the videos are doing its job. However, if my YouTube channel ends up getting very popular because of these videos, I will definitely put more time into the presentation and make it worthy of having so many views. But again, this is just my way of giving back to the community because you guys have supported me for 2 long years that I've been playing this game, and I have all this information that I just want to share with you guys, and hopefully it helps you through your your Smite journey, or just having better games and having more fun. All right, with that being said, I want to start off with the episode. I guess I'll start off with Cabrakan. I haven't played Cabrakan once. However, I played a casual game today and I played against him, and in the solo lane actually, and then I had a few ideas for him. A lot of people are trying to play him as a support, right? However, I think he would be more potent in the solo lane, and here's why. His spells are very in your face, melee, close melee range, and which is fine. However, when you're a support, the early game, you don't really get a lot of farm. You're going Watcher's Gift, has no physical protections. You're going Midas Boots, again, no physical protections. So if you have to be in your opponent's face to get off your abilities, you're just going to die because you just have no protections. However, if you play in the solo lane, you're only dueling one other person. You're only worried about his damage, so you don't have to be scared of getting 100 to 0'd. And also, when you look at his abilities, just his base scaling, he scales so well just with levels. And not only that, he has 4 damaging spells, including his ultimate. His Seismic Crush does 275 damage base just with levels at max level. Refraction Shield, 330 base. His Tremor, 65 damage AoE as long as you have mana. So the faster you get... actually, let's go to his ultimate too. 550 damage base on his ultimate. So, just all these damages, all these abilities together just do so much damage. So in my opinion, the faster you get Cabrakan levels, the more potent he would be in team fights. And how do you do that? Solo farm. Leave him in the solo lane where he hits safe. He has tremendous wave clear with his Tremors. Can just go in the middle of the wave and AoE it down. If the enemy solo lane tries to get near you, he's CC'd, he's all wobbly because of what it does. It disorients them. And he has massive clear. And then if they try to go on him, he can just Seismic Crush, get movement speed, stun the enemy god, and just walk away. And again, he has ridiculous dueling potential too, because he just has nuke after nuke and stun after stun and just high base stats. So I really think Cabrakan will be played in the solo lane more than the support. He will be more potent in the solo lane, and you'll probably start seeing him being picked up in the SPL. Yeah, and that's it for Cabrakan. So definitely in the solo lane, levels are so important on him, and getting those early items because you have all that extra farm is so crucial. So when that mid game comes around and that gold fight comes in, you're going to be a monster. All right, so definitely I think he will be a viable pick, and you'll probably start seeing him soon. Next god, Chaac. Chaac has always been a good god, obviously solo lane. Very potent in the solo lane, has tremendous clear and sustain. His passive overflow lets you use abilities without consuming any mana. Again, that's just extremely good for the solo lane. He does a ton of damage. He's very disruptive. He's just in your face bruiser. Great god. He lacks a little bit of lockdown, so maybe if teams are looking for more CC, that's why he's not picked as often. However, he's still a good pick, viable pick. You'll see him sometimes, you won't see him other times, but he's definitely in a good spot. Moving on, Chang'e Chang'e you're starting to see a little bit more of. Why you don't see her very often is because she just gets dominated in the early game by pretty much every other solo laner in the game. She just does too little damage early, and she just gets bullied really hard. And you know how important the early game is in this meta. However, sometimes you can get away with it if you're focusing, let's say, your team's just going to focus on the other side of the map. They don't care what happens on the solo lane side. You can just play the Chang'e, sit under your farm, sit under your tower and farm. Late game, Chang'e is devastating. She is so hard to kill. She just does consistent damage with a very short cooldown on her one, and her ultimate is game changing. I wouldn't change her. She's just a god made for the late game. And if you build a team comp that will get to the late game, you know, more power to you, pick up Chang'e, good pick. Just don't expect to win your lane in the solo lane most of the time. Next god, Chronos. Chronos is, I just made up a word for it. He's a player god. The player makes the god. Where in other games, it's mostly the kit that makes the character. If he's strong, it's because he has a good kit. Chronos is the kind of god that has a kit that if the player is good with the kit, the god may seem OP. However, if the player is bad with the kit, then the god kind of looks really bad in GIMP. And the reason why I'm saying this is because of his cooldown time rift. It's a very small AoE, does a ton of damage if it hits, short cooldown. However, it is very difficult to hit. And if you do not hit this regularly, especially in team fights, you will do no damage, you will feel extremely GIMP, and you will probably just die. However, if the player is so good with Chronos and hits every single one of his time rifts, or let's say 90%, the god does a ton of damage and seems extremely strong and OP. So this is one of the reasons why I really like Smite, because a god like Chronos, you make the god seem OP, in my opinion. They give you a kit, and they want to see what the player does with it, you know? That's my opinion for the god. Like, the player makes him strong. He can seem either really OP or just really terrible. Whereas if you have a god like Chaac, very easy skill shots, you know? His kit is just strong, everything's pretty easy to land, very straightforward god. You know, really just, there's nothing to it. Chronos, really hard to hit those cooldowns. You activate his 2, he's super fast, you gotta be quick with his autos, etc, etc. So that's why I think Chronos is a niche pick for a certain player. For example, the other day, Osmos, very good Chronos player, he picked it in the duo lane, he's known for his Chronos. It didn't work out that game for whatever reason, but I've seen this guy in ranked, he's amazing with the god, and him compared to, let's say, another random guy trying to play the god, it's night and day how good his Chronos is compared to, let's say, an average player's Chronos. So yeah, just the player makes this god. Moving on. Cupid. Cupid, he's extremely lane dominant. You know, he's a bully in lane, sort of like on her. However, his steroid is also his only escape. So it's not really a potent steroid that you'll be using in the late game for the steroid. You'll be using that to escape, not to get the extra movement speed and attack speed. So that's why you don't really see him picked up. Yes, he is very good early game, has good sustain for his lane partner. Just his late game, he falls off tremendously. Also, Aegis counters his Fields of Love as well as Sprint 2. So, and almost every hunter gets Sprint. So, in the mid game, his ultimate, it's almost impossible to hit unless you time it with a stun heart bomb, which is sort of hard to do. A couple changes, I think, that would make him a little bit better. Maybe put his steroid in his passive. When you have max stacks of the passive, you get extra attack speed that's obviously scales with levels. Another thing I would also say that would make him more potent, at least in what he's supposed to do, which is early lane dominance, is when he uses Heart Bomb or Share the Love before his passive is max stacked, let's say it's at 7, and you use Heart Bomb, it resets back down to 0. I think a nice little quality of life change for Cupid would be do not let his passive reset until it's max stacks. So that way you can get 7 stacks, Heart Bomb the wave, clear the wave, and then set up your next Heart Bomb as a stun. That'll make Cupid a lot more potent in lane, a lot more potent for rotations. Can set up a bit more plays while clearing the wave at the same time. And overall just make it a bit stronger. So that would be a little change I think would make Cupid more viable. If you want to make it more viable in the late game, I think you got to put his steroid somewhere else. Whether it's just the attack speed or movement speed, put it in the passive. I don't really see it fitting in anywhere else in his kit. But yeah, that would be the changes I would make to Cupid. Moving on. Fenrir. Fenrir, he's a god that is super strong early game, pretty strong mid game, and then sort of weak in the late game, and here's why. He has 2 damaging abilities, his Unchained and Brutalize, that scale extremely well with levels. Unchained does 335 damage max rank with 80% scaling on physical power. Brutalize 165 and it hits 4 times. So that is insane damage, and you can 100 to 0 any mage, any hunter, levels 1 through, let's say, I'd say, you know, up to, let's say, 13. However, come late game, people have a lot of HP, they have a lot more lifesteal, a lot more damage, you know, mages build Warlock Sash, you know, and things like that. Hunters have a lot of sustain with their, excuse me, with their lifesteal, as well as, you know, they finish their actives. So you no longer have that 100 to 0 capabilities anymore. And if you brutalize a hunter, give him free auto attacks, I guarantee you his damage will out damage you, as well as him life stealing. You're just going to get destroyed. So Fenrir, that's one of the reasons why Fenrir falls off immensely, is because he has to be in your face, which is really good for the early game and mid game. However, late game, he will just get demolished, out damaged. This is why you don't see Fenrir played in the jungle that much anymore. Where he is more potent, that you've seen, let's say, Fat Chunks do, is in the support role. Why? Because he has such naturally high scaling. So you could build him tank, and he will still do 335 damage, which is insane in the early game, plus his stun. And his Brutalize will still hit 165 minimum 4 times. That is insane damage in the early game. And no squishy is built protections yet, or is still building their health item, and that will still do immense damage, almost 100 to 0, while building tank and being almost unkillable. So that is why you see Fenrir more in the support role now, where I think he is better than in the jungle, built as an assassin. Also, you can also see him in the solo lane. I think he's a good counter pick in the solo lane for other mages if they have a Hebo or a Habwa in the solo lane. Fenrir, I think, is a very good counter pick because he can lock onto the Hebo with his 3. Hebo cannot Water Spout, which is his main line of defense, his knockup, and you can pretty much 100 to 0 the Hebo. But I wouldn't really change Fenrir's kit. It's pretty good. I just think people play him a little bit more wrong in the wrong role. I think he's better off as a tank. Just straight up, you know, just protections and stuff like that. Although, because late game, he's just going to die. You cannot out-damage the hunter using your abilities. Also, maybe one way to play him, too, if you want to play him as an assassin, would just be building, you know, for auto-attack damage. Pop your Seething Howl. Make sure you have 5 stacks of your passive. Go in, stun him, crit, big crits because you have your damage upgrade from your 2, and one-shot somebody. You know, that's what assassins are late game. They one-shot the enemy mage or hunter. So if you build Fenrir for ability damage, yes, you know, like Yo-ins into Shifter Shield, etc. Yes, he'll have a really strong early mid game, but he will fall off late game and not do what he's intended to do, at least in that role, if that's what you're trying to do. So maybe build him more 100 to 0, go for the crit late game. He will, you know, maybe one-shot someone. I don't know. I don't really recommend that. I haven't really tried it. But in my opinion, I think he's better off as a tank. Okay, moving on. Freya. This is a really interesting god. This god is just, she's so squishy to assassins and pretty easily ganked. However, what makes her so strong is just one item, and Hasten Fatalis. If Hasten Fatalis wasn't in the game, Freya would just be a good pick. She wouldn't be OP. You know, her damage, honestly, is just, it's strong, but you can easily just kite away from her, usually. However, because of Hasten Fatalis, she can just chase you all day, nonstop. So, I don't know, like, to balance her out, I can't really see any, like, small changes to really balance her out, because you probably have to change her whole kit, maybe. But, I really just think that one item makes her extremely OP. So she's really a tough one for me. I was thinking about this, you know, a long time before the video, and I can't really see a way to balance her out without changing like a whole ability minimum. I just think that one item is what makes her so potent and OP in many people's eyes. So yeah, I'm gonna move on from Freya. Honestly, if you guys have any ideas, you know, feel free to share. I was thinking about it. I can't really think of any small changes that would really just make her playable, but also pretty balanced at the same time. It's really tough. So I'm gonna move on from Freya. You know, I'll still be thinking about that. Maybe I'll come back to that in another episode, and we'll see. Okay, Geb. I have 2 issues with Geb. One, I think his passive is a little bit too strong. 25%, it just seems too little. You know, why is it so potent, that passive? You know what I mean? Make it maybe 50%. Negate the extra damage from the Deathbringer. 25% just seems a little bit too much. That's one issue I have. The second issue I have is his Stone Shield. It just does too much for one ability. It cleanses. Not only that, it prevents extra knockbacks, as well as gives you a crazy shield that, you know, gives you a lot of extra health to play with. In my opinion, a small nerf would be to keep the cleanse effect. If you take away the cleanse effect from the shield, no one would play Geb. That's one of his strong suits, makes him unique. But I think maybe blocking the knockback effects while it's on already is a bit too much, kind of unnecessary. I think if they remove that, Geb would be seen as a bit less OP and more of just a strong balanced pick. That's it, and also maybe changing the passive, you know, to 50%. That 25% is a little bit too potent in my opinion for the late game. Obviously, it doesn't look like much for the early game because it doesn't really matter. But late game, you know, let's say you crit for 700, that crit would go, or let's say 800, that crit would be 200 now. That's extremely low drop. So that's pretty much it for Geb. Those 2 issues I have with him. So moving on, Guan Yu. Guan Yu, with the recent changes, I think he's in a good spot. I think he could be played in the solo lane or in the duo lane as support, or even jungle, honestly. His ultimate is one of the most damaging ultimates in the game. Again, people just need to play him more, see where he fits in better, and that's pretty much it. I think he has a strong kit. He's definitely viable. People just don't play him right now, but I'm sure people will in the future. Next up, Hades. This is an interesting god. He kind of suffers from what Anubis does. His main damage forces you to be in melee range, and therefore you're easily bursted. However, I do think he's underrated in the sense that I think he could be good in the solo lane. He's very strong against other mages, and definitely very strong against melee gods, because they can't get into creep range without you getting bursted from the Blight and the 1-3 combo. And I think, you know, with HP, building him more bruisery, he can divide it enemy team in half, you know, with his ultimate, or just have crazy zoning. So I think he's a bit underplayed. People are scared to play him, but I think he can be pretty potent in the solo lane with a HP bruisery mage build. So I mean, we'll have to see. I don't really think he needs changes. I just think he needs to be played more and used in different sort of team comps. And I really do think Hades can have some success in the solo lane. But people just need to play him more and try it out in scrims and stuff. So moving on. Hebo. He's fine. He's just a glass cannon mage. He does his job. I don't really nerfed his damage already. I think he's in a good spot. You know, he's very he's easily killed with ganks, and especially by assassins. However, if the player is really good with Hebo, he's kind of like another Chronos in my opinion. The player makes the god, in a sense that if you land all your water spouts and water cannons, he's gonna look really strong. But if you miss those tiny water sprouts, you know, that's your main defense, especially in the early game. You're just gonna get destroyed because it's a long cooldown. You cannot miss your water spout. If the enemy team sees you miss your water spout, they will just jump on you and kill you, or at least make you waste your ultimate. And so in that sense, that's why I think Hebo's balanced. Yes, he does a lot of damage on his one, but he's kind of high risk, high reward, you know. So I think Hebo's in a pretty good spot right now. He can be played mid, he can play jungle, he can be played solo. He's pretty good in all those roles. I wouldn't say he's OP, just a glass cannon mage, and that's pretty much it. Moving on. Hell. Hell, I think, is another underrated pick. She does insane damage. Her natural stats are really good. She get 280 on her repulse in Dark Stance, plus the extra damage that you get from your passive. She does insane damage. I think you may be seeing more of Hell in the future. People are just scared to play her right now, but I really do think she can be played in the solo lane. Or even in the mid lane, honestly. You just need to be babysat by your jungler. And she could do... If she gets even a little bit ahead, she just dominates. So I think she's fine the way she is. People just need to be more brave to play her and see if they can build a comp around her. And honestly, that's pretty much it for Hell. Hercules. Another god that I think is a player-made god. 2 skill shots that are somewhat hard to hit. However, if you hit his Earthbreaker, it can be game-changing. It could be... If you hit a clutch Earthbreaker, let's say in late game, and get that pick, you win the whole game. You know, but also it's also a very hard thing to hit, which is why people don't really play him as much. But let's say you're a guy that hits all his pulls. Hercules can be one of the most, or seemingly most OP gods in the game. But again, it's up to the player to hit that skill shot. So I wouldn't really change him. I'm glad they nerfed his mitigate wounds a little bit. It was definitely a little bit too strong. Other than that, again, a player-made god. Player makes the god does make the player. If someone can hit his Earthbreaker 90% of the time, this god is extremely strong. If he can't land a single pull, the god loses his value. That's pretty much it for Hercules. Again, it's up to the player to make that god seem strong. Hun Batz. I think he's just a really strong pick. Balanced. He's a good assassin. There's really nothing much to say about Hun Batz. He's just a good pick. Viable. And that's pretty much it. Isis. Again, she's extremely good. Her kit's great. She has a ton of CC, and crowd control. Okay, I'm sorry. I said CC and crowd control. That's dumb. She just has a ton of CC. She has a silence. She has a stun. Like the best clear in the game in the early game with her Wing Gust. And one of the best objective securing ultimates in the game with her Circle of Protection. Why is she not played? Because of the mid-hearted fights in the meta. She doesn't have 100-0 burst potential like Al Quang does, or Kukulkan, sorry, or Ra, or Scylla, etc. And that's what people are looking for right now in their mid picks. However, if the meta changes a little bit, Isis is an extremely good pick. Also, she's sort of like Agni. If you can get to the late game, she's extremely potent. Her Spirit Ball can do anywhere from 800 to 1,000 damage, especially max rank. Her Wing Gust can hit for 200 to 300 each tick, and it hits 4 times. Her Circle of Protection can one-shot somebody at max stacks. So she's definitely really potent in the late game. However, right now in the meta, it's a lot about the early game and the early mid-harpy fights, and that is why you don't see her picked as often. So that is today's episode. I did another 3 rows. Again, please, these are my opinions. Don't take them as, the God's truth. Leave some feedback, discuss the gods if you want, and please refer to the beginning of this video about the message I said about my YouTube, etc., about the production value and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. If you liked it, please subscribe, and I'll have another episode probably tomorrow. Take care, everybody.